Well, hello everybody. It's me again. It's Paul Olaf Sveen, son of Olaf Sveen, the man you just heard play the accordion with his band, and that's Olaf Sveen. It's my dad, and that is the Cuckoo Waltz. That's what that song is called, and it's actually on the first long play LP in Saskatchewan history. That's, you know what, that's not everything, but that's not nothing. It's not nothing. It's my dad's first long play album in Saskatchewan history. And man, we had a real difficult time finding this album. The first album that my dad recorded. We looked all over the world with our computer expert, the Wizard, and he found a copy in an Eastern Bloc country. And we ended up calling the people in Yaslakistan, wherever they're from, forget the name of the country, and we talked back and forth. He couldn't talk. The guy that had the album couldn't speak English. His wife did, and it was broken English. And I'm kind of used to that because that's how my dad talked. I don't know. People would come to the house to visit my buddies, and they'd say, "Hello, Mr. Sveen," and he would try to say a few words to them, and they didn't. They looked at me as if my dad was speaking a different language. He was speaking English, but he was my dad. I didn't notice his huge accent. And, we had this huge TV at the far, far, far end of the house in the living room against the window. And my dad sat at the kitchen table. And when he wanted to watch the news at 6 o'clock, he had all the channel changers. Back in the day, there was like 3 or 4 channel changers you need to work the TV set. And he would he would take the channel changer, and we always told him, "Dad, never take the TV off channel 3, otherwise the cable won't work. The cable has to be on channel 3. Use the other channel changer to change the programs. Do not change the channel changer with the big channel changer. Don't change the channel, just leave it alone. If you take it off channel 3, it's going to be fuzz and snow and all that stuff." And he would do it every time. He would turn the TV to the wrong channel. All of a sudden, the news would start, then bang, it's a blizzard on the TV set, and my dad would yell, "Mama! Mama! Somebody buttered up the television." And what he said was, "Mom, somebody buggered up the television," but it sounded like, "Mama! Mama! Somebody buttered up the television." And plus, he had the TV so loud, it was like Led Zeppelin would be plugging their ears. That's because he was way over in the kitchen, wouldn't move. That was his special place. And anybody that was sitting in the living room near the TV set, their ears would be bleeding, listening to the weather on the TV set. So that song, Cuckoo's Waltz, is it's a great song. I remember my dad playing it all the time at the kitchen table on Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings. And I talked on the first chapter 1 of Leader of the Band, which this series is called. And my dad had a couple of different bands. He had Ole and his accordion orchestra, and he had another one, and the original band was Ole and his Playmates. And let me get this straight. The 4 original members in Ole and his Playmates are Bill Webb, who was a World War II vet that stormed the beach at Normandy. Elmer Ledke played bass. I talked to his son. We talked back and forth, and he told me stories about his father playing in the band. And Bill Webb, the war veteran that farmed in the area, his son told me that my dad, he moved eventually from the area to the big city to record more albums, but Bill Webb, he would farm with his Ole and his Playmates shirt on, the country shirt that they wore at the barn dances. And Bill Webb's son told me that when Elmer Lutke died, the bass player passed away, Bill Webb walked up to the to the coffin, and Bill Webb put his picture of Oleana's playmates in the coffin to be with Elmer Ledtke, the bass player, because all of them said, all of them, Bill Webb, Elmer Ledtke, Raymond Fleck, who was my godfather, by the way, and Joe Fieber, all of them said that was the best time of their lives, recording records and touring with my dad. And so many stories, kids, so many stories, and we're so grateful you're here with us in these audio chapters of my dad's musical journey, leader of the band. And let's hear another song off my dad's first long play LP. Olaf Sveen and his accordion orchestra play polkas, shawteases, and old-time Canadian favorites here on the audio chapters, leader of the band. And that beautiful, beautiful waltz is called Where the Water Lilies Grow, and it's again on my dad's first long play album. Olaf Sveen and his accordion orchestra play polkas, shawteases, and old-time Canadian favorites. And going back to the previous song, the Cuckoo's Waltz, we had a cat named Cuckoo. Nernie, my wife, is really good at naming stuff. She called our dog Ruby because Ruby looked like a little red Shar-Pei kind of a doggy. But Cuckoo was a street kitty and kind of a stray, and we raised it. And she called it Cuckoo. And if we played this song, and I said something like, I love Cuckoo's Waltz, Cuckoo would look at me and go, meow. Anytime he said it, there was a movie on once, Jack Black said the word cuckoo, and our cat looked at the TV and went, meow. So our cat really was Cuckoo. We have a lot of really, really cool stories here. Some of them are really funny. Mama, Mama, somebody butted up the television. And it goes on. We have so many of these stories, and some are really inspirational. I'm going to be sharing some lessons that when I look back on these albums that my dad recorded, and you know who I was at the time, his son, I look for the lessons that my dad was sharing in his music. And I've said in the first chapter, my dad was in the business of creating happiness because that's what he did through his music. He manufactured, he composed, and he shared happiness. When Dad played for a dance, everybody was on the floor smiling. And that's a miracle. But my dad passed away in 2007. And, I was working a lot. I was on the road a lot, and I had a day job. And so I was there as much as I could to visit my dad. And my wife, Noreen, went to visit him all the time. And one of the last things my dad asked my wife was, are you going to take care of Paul?" And my wife said yes. And I'm not an easy person to take care of. I should be in a cage. But I went to visit my dad. This was a few days before he passed, and he was sleeping. And I pulled the chair up and I sat next to him and I was talking to him and I was telling him things like, "Dad, I'm not ready for you to leave." It's been 20 years now since he's been gone almost, and I'm still not ready for my dad to leave. I rediscovered who my dad is. I discovered my dad through the music and through writing the manuscript Leader of the Band and doing all the research with my wife on all the letters we found and all the newspaper articles and magazines and radio interviews. I rediscovered my father. And, when my dad was really starting to kick butt as a musician, I was falling as a kid. I was, lost. And as I got older and my dad wasn't doing so well and I was going up and I was doing well, my dad was falling. And so, I remember holding his hand, talking to him about all these things I just mentioned to you. And one of the workers for the assisted living senior center where my dad was, I don't know why she thought she had to share this, but she said, "It won't be long now. I can tell by your dad's breathing that it won't be long now." And I just thought, well, thanks a lot, succubus, for that information. You obviously don't know any Sveens because I'm all about the suffering. You don't need to tell me that my dad is going to pass away. I didn't need to know that. And she walked away, and there was a cassette player next to the bed. And it was, I'm not sure if you remember Bobby Catola. He was a little Canadian entertainer, had some pretty good songs back in the day. And my mom bought his authentic Bobby Catola cassette player. And don't be jealous, but she had one. And I was sitting next to my dad, and there was a cassette in there, and I pressed play, and it was a song, Leader of the Band, the 70s AM Gold, Dan Fogelberg. And I listened to the lyrics, and he was singing about his relationship with his dad, who was also a soldier once, and also a musician, who was a father that tried to do the best he could, and because he wasn't home all the time. And I'll be sharing little quotes from the song throughout the chapters, but it was just such an incredible synchronous moment that I was holding my father's hand, who was about to cross over, and I heard the song Leader of the Band, and that's why we call this series The Leader of the Band. And let's hear one more song off the first album in Saskatchewan history, composed and produced by my dad, Olaf Sveen. I'm his son, Paul Olaf Sveen. You're listening to the musical journey of my dad on these audio chapters, The Leader of the Band. And that absolute gem is the Kvasser Waltz, again from my dad's first long play album. Olaf Sveen and his accordion orchestra play polkas, schottisches, and old-time Canadian favorites. And this album was recorded in 1958. And I remember my dad playing, the Kvasser Waltz around the table with his ne'er-do-well accordion drinking buddies. And they would all play different songs and stuff. And they would, when the doorbell rang at our house, you never knew who it was. It could be a fiddle band from Italy or Sweden or Norway or whatever, accordion players from Russia. You just never knew. And they would stay for 3 or 4 days, and they would jam in the backyard and drink, and neighbors would show up, and family members and friends, and turned into a big party. And I've seen some of these Scandinavians, especially my dad's little inner circle of trolls, accordion players would drink hard, eh? They would drink Rignes beer or whatever they drank. The beer was of the week, and they would drink Akivit, which is Scandinavian liquor. And I'm not lying here. It came in a ceramic bottle, this stuff. And once somebody left one on the stove, and there was 4 or 5 accordion players standing around the table, and the bottle of Akivit exploded, and it exploded against the wall, and it caught on fire, and nobody from the table moved. They just watched it burn out, and then started laughing, and went back to whatever the heck they were talking about. But it was these guys went hard, and it's watching a inebriated accordion player stand looked exactly like a ski jumper trying to get ready and prepare to fly off the end of a ski jump. They would take 17 tries, and they would, the other accordion players are like, oh, and then they would fall back on the chair, and they would keep on trying to stand like 1 foot behind them, and then would slide backwards, and the other foot would slide forward, and they would keep on trying like their last toxicology screen was a sham, and they would keep trying, and finally on like the 17th try, they would kind of stand after they took another big shot of Akivit, and they would stand up, and they'd put their hands out and go, ta-da! Yeah, ne'er-do-well accordion players. Seen it, can't unsee it. Now I'm going to play a song from my dad's next album, and this was a really, really hard record to find. And it's rare, and we have it. And it's called Olaf Sveen and his Old Time Accordion. And they spell T-Y-M-E, time, like that, like the way they used to spell it back in the 10th century. And we're going to play a song or two off of that, and we'll get you right back here to my dad's musical journey on these audio chapters of Leader of the Band. And that gem is called Farmer's Life. That's what my dad did. He was a farmer in Saskatchewan and on a tractor, right? Harvesting and bringing in crops and stuff. And at night he'd play for dances and he worked hard. And, you know, when he had some time off, he would compose songs and he would drive to Regina and record albums or do a show on a radio station. And the cover of this second album here, Olaf Sveen and his Old Time Accordion, is a town called Rowett, Saskatchewan, and it was halfway between Steelman, where we lived, and Regina, where my dad had to go. And I think that's the reason why he had that on the album cover, because he probably stopped there for a coffee or something on the way to Regina. And I had said we'd call these audio chapters The Leader of the Band, and the reason why that was because of, I mentioned earlier, it was a song that was playing on the cassette when my dad was near the end of his life. Here's a few words to that song, Leader of the Band. The leader of the band is tired and his eyes are growing old, but his blood runs through my instruments and his song is in my soul. My life has been a poor attempt to imitate the man. I'm just a living legacy of the leader of the band. And that's why we call this The Leader of the Band. And I decided to look back on all these albums and try find the message that my dad was trying to teach me, or what the message I missed when I was a kid back in the day. The message I get, or the lesson I get from this time, as hard as we work to discover the reason why we're here, our purpose, you know, once we start to piece together the reason why we're here, and if we discover it or find, you know, parts of it and start to build on our purpose, it is then our purpose to help others around us to find their purpose. Because the more we help everybody around us and the more we give, the more successful we'll be at what we do. And that's what my dad did. He helped everybody. He was students hung out and talked to my dad decades after he taught them. They just loved my father because he made a difference. Not only with his music, which created happiness, but also as a person. It doesn't matter who you were or what you did, he would sit and talk to you and make you feel good about who you were. That was my dad, Olaf Sveen. And we're going to leave you with one more song here on Chapter 2 of Olaf Sveen's musical journey, The Leader of the Band. This is a shawtees. And this song is called Dragpels Lek. Say that 4 times fast. Okay, we'll leave you with that song. I am Paul Olaf Sveen, and we are tickled pink that you're joining us here on this trip down memory lane on my dad Olaf Sveen's musical journey, Leader of the Band, and we will see you again at the beginning of Chapter 3. I am Paul Olaf Sveen, and we'll talk to you soon. So nice to have you with us on The Leader of the Band.